I lost my sight. But this morning, miraculously, I could see again. I wanted to tell my parents the good news, but I found a crumpled up tissue under my bed. There was a message on the tissue. Don't tell them you can see. 3 months ago, I lost my sight because of a car accident. My parents moved us away from the city in order to take better care of me. But this morning, I miraculously regained my sight. I was just about to tell my parents the good news when I suddenly noticed a crumpled up tissue under my bed. I had an extremely strong demand for cleanliness, so I picked it up. But there seemed to be something written on the tissue. As I smoothed it out, I frowned. Don't tell them you can see. The handwriting was messy, as if someone had written it in a great hurry. There was no one else here. Them obviously meant my parents. But then I had no idea who could be the one leaving this message. During these 3 months, the only people who came to my room were my parents and my husband, Noah. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Ella, Eve made you some soup. My mom's kind voice sounded from behind the door. I casually threw the tissue into a dustbin, but when I opened the door, my pupils shrank. A woman was standing at the door with a bowl, looking at me, smiling. Her lips were bright red, and the smile on her face looked eerie. She was not my mom. I jerked back a step and looked at her with a shocked face. My mom was a kind-looking woman, but this woman looked very shrewd, and her features did not bear the slightest resemblance to my mom. But the strangest thing was that her voice was exactly the same as my mom's. I was just about to question who she was when I suddenly remembered the message on the tissue. Don't tell them you can see. Ella, what's wrong? Not feeling well? The woman took a worried step closer to me. Just leave the soup here, Mom. I'll eat it later. I fumbled to sit back on the bed and said slowly, You should have it while it's hot. Ella, why don't you let me feed it to you? The woman said. I immediately refused, but I'm still a little sleepy, Mom. I want to take a nap. I'll eat it later. The woman didn't insist as she left the bowl on the nightstand and went out. The moment she closed the door, I let out a sigh of relief. My back was completely drenched with cold sweat. Where had my mom gone? And who was this woman? I was really worried about my mom, so I opened the door and walked out. It was the first time I saw where I had been living for the past few months. The spacious, 2-story villa. I stood on the second floor and saw a man sitting on the sofa in the living room with his back to me reading a newspaper. This must be my dad. I looked around to make sure the woman was not in the room, and then lowered my voice as I called out, Dad. The man turned his head, and I saw his face. Fear swept through my entire body, for what I saw was not my dad, but another face that was completely unfamiliar to me. Ella, what's wrong? Yet from the man's mouth came the voice of my dad. I squeezed out a smile. Nothing, Dad. The woman walked out from another room. Her bright red lips pulled into an extravagant smile. Ella, weren't you going to take a nap? Oh, changed my mind. Maybe I don't need a nap that much, Mom. I smiled. Then let me help you eat the soup. The woman brought out the soup from my room and fed it to me with a spoon. I was very anxious, afraid that the woman would notice that I could see, but fortunately, she did not seem to notice anything. I could hardly taste the soup because I didn't know what the woman could have put into it. What's wrong, Ella? You're sweating so much and look worried. She noticed something after all. She approached closer with concern. Her eyes were staring straight into mine. Those eyes were very large, but the white took up most of them. Oh, I just don't know when my eyes will actually recover, I said, pretending to be frustrated. The woman smiled. Don't worry, Ella, you'll be fine. I squeezed out another smile as the woman stroked my head lovingly. When I returned to my room, I immediately locked the door and sat down on the bed. My chest was full of fear. Half a month ago, my husband, Noah, had come to visit me once. And why? Husband was a plane captain and had a very busy schedule at that time. He had a good talk with my parents and even got drunk, so he spent the night in the villa. That meant that half a month ago, my parents were still my real parents. I found my phone, which had been set in voice mode since I lost my sight. I called Noah. He answered immediately. Noah's voice was as gentle as ever. Yes, Ella, I just got off the plane. I can come and see you now. Noah, this might sound crazy to you, but believe me, all I'm going to tell you now is true. I said in an urgent tone. Noah was silent for a moment before he said, "I will believe whatever you say, Ella, no matter what it is." I told Noah everything. "I'm coming over right now,
Ella.
The airport was about an hour's drive away. Noah coming over eased a lot of my anxiety. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Ella, it's time to take your meds." My dad's voice sounded outside, but I knew it wasn't my dad. It was that strange man. Heartbeat faster, and I stared at the door. As I didn't answer him, the man began to turn the doorknob. "Why did you lock the door, Ella? Your eyes won't heal if you don't take your meds." The man urged me to open the door, but I was determined not to open it. Not until Noah came over asleep. "Okay." The man chuckled. I heard his footsteps going down the stairs. I breathed a sigh of relief, but something felt strange. I had a strong feeling of being watched. I walked nervously to the door and listened for movement outside. It was completely silent. Sounded like the man was gone, but I still felt uneasy, so I carefully got down to the floor, wanting to have a peek outside from under the door. A pair of eyes with a lot of whites outside. The man also got down to the floor. His eyes were staring straight at me. I was instantly covered with cold sweat. I pretended not to see him and slowly groped on the floor. Strange. I think I just dropped my phone around here. Those eyes disappeared from the slit. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for AI or so freaking creepy. What did this creepy couple want from me? Where my parents had gone. And now the only thing I could do was waiting for Noah to arrive. After an hour of torturous waiting, Noah finally called. He sounded very anxious. "Ella, where the hell are you now?" "What?" "I'm at the villa. You've been here before. Have you got to the wrong place?" I also got more anxious. "I am at the villa, but I don't see you or your parents. So dusty here. Like no one has lived here for a long time." Noah sounded puzzled. I was appalled. Noah sent me a photo. Indeed, it was the villa, but Noah was right. It seemed to be unoccupied for a long time. The sofa was covered with a thick layer of dust, and the room corners even had cobwebs. Clearly, that was not the villa I was in right now. But the layout was exactly the same as this villa. A chill ran down my spine as I looked again at the photos Noah had sent. Something was terribly wrong. It was like I was trapped in a nightmare, and the more I tried to wake up, the deeper I seemed to fall. I knew I needed to get out of here before it was too late. With my phone still in my hand, I sent a message to Noah, describing exactly where I was and asking him to try to find an alternative way into this other villa. I had to do it silently. I knew those imposters could hear anything I said. "I'll try," he replied quickly. "Don't leave your room until I get there." I was beginning to sweat with anxiety, my heart pounding. I heard the man's footsteps descending the stairs, but that didn't mean he had given up. I moved away from the door, trying to think of what to do while waiting for Noah. Time seemed to drag, and the silence of the house was unnerving. I didn't know where those two were, or what they might do if they discovered I could see again. Suddenly, I heard footsteps climbing the stairs again. The sound made my stomach drop. The door to the bedroom was locked, but that didn't make me feel any safer. The knocks echoed from the other side. "Ella, I brought more soup." It was the voice of that woman, the one pretending to be my mother. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm not hungry, Mom," I replied, trying to disguise the fear in my voice. "But you need to eat. Open the door, dear." I felt tears beginning to well up in my eyes. What did they want from me? They were clearly trying to control me, and I had no idea why. All I knew was that I needed to buy time until Noah arrived. "I'm tired. I'm just going to sleep a little longer," I said, forcing a yawn. Silence. After a moment, I heard footsteps retreating again. I let out a breath. I hadn't even realized I was holding and sat down on the bed, my head pounding. That was when I noticed something strange. The glass of water on the nightstand. I was sure it hadn't been there before. My mind started connecting the dots, and the fear inside me grew. They were trying to drug me. A shiver ran through my body, and all I wanted to do was run, but I knew I had to be smart. I waited a few minutes, trying to calm myself. I needed to be ready for when Noah arrived. I grabbed a piece of paper and quickly wrote a note. "They are not my parents. Do not trust them." I hid the paper under the pillow, hoping Noah would find it if something went wrong. Then I heard a noise coming from downstairs, a door slamming, and then quick footsteps. Someone was coming. I stood up from the bed, my heart racing. When the doorknob started to move, I backed away instinctively. It was locked, but I knew it wouldn't last long if they wanted to get in. "Ella, dear, open the door, please." The woman's voice came, now without any sweetness, as a cold command. "We don't want to hurt you." My body froze. The doorknob kept turning, and I knew they might try to break the door down. Desperation washed over me, and then I remembered the window. It was my only way out. I went to it quickly and looked down. It was high, but maybe I could make it down using the balcony railing. Without thinking twice, I opened the window carefully and began climbing down, gripping the railing and trying not to look down. The cold night wind gave me chills, but I couldn't stop. As soon as I reached the ground, I started running, not looking back. My legs were trembling, but I needed to find Noah. I ran through the villa's yard until I reached the gate. It was locked, of course, but there was an opening in the fence, a small hope. I squeezed through it, scratching my arms, but I managed to get through. As soon as I got to the road, I saw headlights approaching. It was Noah. I ran towards the car, waving frantically. He stopped abruptly and got out, running towards me. "Ella." He hugged me tightly, and I allowed myself to cry, relieved to finally be with someone I could trust. "They aren't my parents, Noah," I screamed, sobbing. "They're imposters trying to keep me trapped there. Let's get out of here now." He pulled me to the car, and I quickly got in. Noah went around and got in the driver's seat, immediately speeding away. I looked back through the window. The villa was there, but something seemed different. The lights were off, and for a moment, it looked even more abandoned, like the photo Noah had shown me. I felt dizzy, like I was losing my grasp on reality. "You're safe now, Ella. I promise." Noah's voice was firm, but I noticed something in his tone that unsettled me. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my fear under control. "To a safe place where no one can hurt you." Suddenly, something felt wrong. I looked at Noah's face, trying to find the comfort he always gave me, but his eyes were fixed on the road, and there was something in them that made me uneasy. I remembered the note I left under the pillow. What if Noah wasn't who I thought he was either? "Noah," I began, hesitant. "You believe me, don't you? About everything I said?" He looked at me for a second, with a strange smile on his lips. "Of course, Ella. I always believe you." My heart sank, and I realized the nightmare was far from over. Noah kept driving, and although I was relieved to be far away from that strange house, something still felt wrong inside me. I looked at him, trying to find comfort, but there was something strange in his eyes, something I couldn't quite understand. My memories were hazy, and a feeling of unreality was washing over me. Suddenly, I began to feel incredibly weak, as if all the strength was leaving my body. The view in front of me began to distort, and Noah's voice became distant, as if he was speaking from the end of a long tunnel. I wanted to scream, wanted to ask what was happening, but I couldn't form the words. Everything around me started to fade into a blur, and I was engulfed in a deep, comforting darkness. Suddenly, a bright light appeared, and I found myself in a completely different place. There was no car, no road, no Noah. I was in a vast field, covered in a soft mist. In the distance, I saw familiar figures, and my heart pounded with emotion and fear. It was my mother, or what looked like my mother, and beside her, my father. They were smiling at me, but the smiles weren't warm. They were cold, expressionless. "Ella, dear," my mother called, extending her hand to me. "It's time for you to come with us." I took a step back, something inside me telling me that this wasn't right. They weren't my parents. I felt it deep in my soul. "No, I can't go with you," I replied, my voice sounding weak and distant. My mother's smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of impatience. That was when I heard another voice, a voice I would recognize anywhere. "Ella, don't go." I turned and saw Noah, or someone who looked like Noah, but there was something different about him now. He was surrounded by a bright light, and his eyes no longer held the discomfort I had noticed before. They were kind and protective, filled with a goodness that seemed infinite. "You can't go with them, Ella," he said, approaching me and extending his hand. "It's not your time." Who are they?" I asked, looking at the figures who now seemed even more distant and threatening. "They aren't your parents," Noah replied, his voice firm and reassuring. "They are beings who came to take you, but you don't belong to them yet. You have so much to do, so many people who need you." I looked at him, trying to understand. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. The strange house, the imposters, the constant feeling of danger. I was caught between life and death, and these beings wanted to take me away. Noah was my protector, my guardian. He was there to ensure I wouldn't give up. But how? I began to ask, but Noah just smiled and wrapped me in a gentle embrace. "Trust me, Ella. It's time for you to wake up." And with those words, the light around us intensified until everything vanished in a blinding flash. When I opened my eyes again, I felt a heaviness in my lungs, as if I was breathing for the first time in years. I blinked a few times, adjusting my vision to the light in the room, and realized I was lying in a hospital bed. Around me, machines beeped softly, and I heard low voices and whispers. I turned my head slowly and saw familiar faces. My father, my mother, and
Noah.
They were there, but now they seemed so different from how I had seen them in that strange place. My mother had tears in her eyes, and my father held her hand tightly, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Ella," my mother whispered, and then her tears flowed freely. "She woke up. It's a miracle," I heard my father say, his voice choked with emotion. Noah was beside them, but not as I had seen him before. Now he was my husband, the man I loved and trusted. His eyes were filled with tears, and when our eyes met, he smiled, a smile so full of love that it nearly broke my heart. That was when I understood. All that time, I had been in a coma. The car accident had left me in a state between life and death, and what I experienced was a near-death experience. The beings who looked like my parents were forces that wanted to take me, but Noah, or a representation of something greater, saved me. He was my guardian angel, the one who had fought for me to have another chance at life. Through her tears, my mother explained that the doctors had already lost hope. They had authorized the disconnection of the machines that were keeping me alive, but somehow, at that exact moment, I came back. They said it was a miracle, and I knew, deep down in my heart, that it truly was. After that, nothing was the same. I began to believe that there was something greater, something divine watching over me. I started seeking answers in faith, in spirituality, because I knew that experience had been more than just a dream. It was a sign, a gift, the chance to start over. Today, I am grateful every day for being alive. Waking up from the coma and seeing my family by my side, especially Noah, felt like being reborn. And I will never forget the light, the gentle whispers of Noah telling me that it wasn't my time yet. After waking up from that coma, my life changed completely. I became a different person, someone who had a new appreciation for life and what it means to be alive. That experience wasn't just a strange dream or a delirium caused by the coma. It was something much deeper, something spiritual that connected me to something beyond human understanding. It didn't take me long to realize that I needed to share what I had experienced. Today, I dedicate a large part of my time to giving talks in churches and community centers. I share my story with those who need a reason to believe, to find hope. I stand at the pulpit and see attentive faces, some skeptical, others already with tears in their eyes before I even begin to speak. And I always start the same way. I went to a place where light and darkness coexisted. I stood between life and death, and somehow, someone was there to bring me back. I talk about the beings I encountered who looked like my parents but were not. I talk about the fear I felt, the confusion, and about the one who saved me, Noah, or at least a part of him, a representation of a guardian angel. Whenever I reach that part, I feel a tightness in my chest. I can't explain exactly who or what Noah was in that moment, but what I know is that without him, I wouldn't be here today. My family still gets emotional every time I tell this story. I remember the first time I shared everything with them after waking up. My mother cried so much she could barely speak, while my father stood beside her, his eyes filled with tears. They told me that, to them, it was practically impossible to believe I had survived that accident. When I was taken to the hospital, the doctors had no hope. The injuries were too severe, and, to make matters worse, right after the surgery, I fell into a deep coma. It was at that moment that I lost my vision, not physically, but because I was trapped in a limbo state, a battle for my soul. The loss of sight, the dark and confusing environment I experienced in that dream, was a representation of the vulnerable state I was in, caught between the world of the living and the dead. When I talk about the beings trying to take me away, my mother always cries. She tells me that during the time I was in a coma, there were moments when it seemed like I was slipping away, as if my body was giving up. And it was during those moments that Noah, my real husband, was more present than ever, holding my hand, praying beside me, talking to me even though I couldn't respond. Today, he is still my protector, and now I see him not just as the man I love, but as someone who, in some way, channeled that divine force that brought me back. It doesn't matter what you call it, guardian angel, miracle, faith. I know I was saved by something greater than all of us. And I am grateful every single day. When I wake up in the morning, I take a deep breath and feel the joy of being alive. I see the colors of the sunrise, hear the birds singing, and feel a gratitude that I had never experienced before. Life is precious, and now I see every small moment as a gift. At my last talk, a young woman approached me afterward. She had tears in her eyes and told me she had lost hope in life, that she felt there was no reason to go on. After hearing my story, she found a new meaning. She said that if I could come back from something so devastating, then maybe she could find the strength to move forward too. When I hugged her, I felt that I was doing the right thing. My experience was not in vain. I was here to help others see the light, even when everything seemed shrouded in shadows. And whoever that guardian angel was, whether it was Noah, his essence, or something that took his form to save me, I am eternally grateful. I know it wasn't my time, and now I live each day as an opportunity to honor the gift I received. My family fully supports me on this journey. They are part of my new life, a life full of purpose. And every time I remember their scared faces at the hospital when they thought they would lose me, and the indescribable joy I felt waking up and seeing them all by my side, I know I am here for a reason. Today, we are closer than ever, and every hug, every smile, carries a greater weight, a certainty that miracles are real and that faith can move mountains. Yes, the doctors said it was a miracle, and I believe it.